Now, the City of Tshwane says it has approved policy that allows special leave for employees who need to become traditional healers, a practice known as ukuthwasa. The Traditional Healers Organization has welcomed this move, urging other government institutions and the private sector to follow suit. Dubbed as a bold and historic step, the city says it's a moment that will forever be remembered as a turning point in municipal governance. It believes governments should start honouring this kind of special leave, as it cannot be associated with annual leave days or misunderstood for absenteeism. Siyabonga Mkhize of the Umsamo Institute joins us for more as we expand the conversation. Siyabonga, good evening. Thank you for your time. I mean, this approved policy is being seen and celebrated as a turning point in municipal governance. What's your reaction to this announcement?
Good evening to yourself and the listeners or viewers rather of SABC. So I think it's not necessary that we're pioneering. There are private companies, some private schools in fact, that have started this initiative a long time ago. I think there is a private company, the first one that I heard of started about 3 years ago, drafting a policy on African spirituality. And there's a couple of SOEs that have already started drafting policies on, or leave policies for African spirituality and African healing. It is a great opportunity for us to recognize the importance of African healing and African spirituality, but with every opportunity we need to be cognizant of the risks that come with it, as well as being very cautious of how do we protect the relationship between the employee and the employer. That, I think, is the hardest thing for us to navigate, is how do we balance the needs spiritually of the employee without compromising the employer's operations. Because with something like ukuthwasa, where it isn't like medicine or accounting, where it's a set number of years and there's objectives, where it can be open-ended, it is important that companies are able to draft policies which will balance. And in fact, it's probably best that HR begin to consult traditional healers, people that are very versed and people that are very knowledgeable in African spirituality, so that they themselves have an in-house consultant who can actually look after their needs and engage the employee, and possibly even engage the employee's traditional healer or their gobela that is assisting them. Because if you don't have someone in-house as an employer, how then do you understand the spiritual needs? How do you protect yourself as an employer? How do you protect your operations without infringing on this employee's cultural and spiritual rights?
As you touch on those risks, what do you think some of the biggest challenges will be around granting such leave? Because it cannot be associated with annual leave days or misunderstood for absenteeism. There is actual spiritual work being done in the person's absence.
So the two biggest risks that I see is the lack of documentation, in terms of drafting reports that are constantly given to HR of the employer, updating the employer of the initiate or the employee's progress and whether or not, in terms of the prognosis and the plan, we're on track. So it's very difficult because traditional healers in general, we are still beginning the process of drafting reports or client feedback and progress reports. We're still starting that process. The second biggest risk is then going to be the issue of who is legit and who is not legit, the authentication process of traditional healers. Why should a healer with Umsamo Institute's letter weigh more than another healer's letter? How then do we distinguish between which healers are more credible than the other one? So that's the second one. The third risk is because we haven't yet overcome misdiagnosis of the need for initiation, there are going to be a possible cohort of individuals who are applying for leave of 2, 3, 4, 5, or even 6 months when they risk their pension fund, they risk going I mean, one of the companies has a policy of 6 months, and of the 6 months, 3 months is paid, and the last 3 months is unpaid, but you still get your benefits.
Yeah.
So you've got people that are risking going 3 months unpaid leave, right? When they don't know that possibly they may have been misdiagnosed of having a calling, because just because you have a calling doesn't necessarily mean that you must twasa. And a lot of individuals don't actually know that there is significant degree of room for negotiation with your ancestors, and it is possible to balance both your work requirements as well as your requirements spiritually, nasemsamo and eshozi. So I would say that those are the three largest areas where there is the greatest risk. And Umsamo, being an organization that is helping companies and employers navigate this, those are definitely ones that companies are really struggling to overcome at the moment.
It sounds like it's going to get very complicated. I mean, with the City of Tshwane starting to embrace African spirituality in the workplace, isn't it broader than becoming a traditional healer? How should that be defined?
You see, the problem that we have is our perception that if you are going to twasa, then you must have a ndumba and you must become a healer. We're under the assumption that if somebody has a calling, then therefore they must twasa, right? So when we begin to engage in the discourse and educate people on they are about, when you talk about someone ozale wembet, and for English terms, to give an English term for that, born spiritually gifted, there are about 6 to 7 different categories under that banner of ukuzala wembet. And there are things that you can do in the process, right, prior to the actual initiation process. I've always said we have too many ndumbas. And we have too many, we don't have enough healers, it's not that we have too many ndumbas. We don't understand that idlozi would never remove you as an advocate of 20 years and force you to be ukobela full time. Your career is your vehicle of healing. So we are yet to understand between ourselves, right, as a community, that uba nobizo, or having a gift or a calling, is about bringing back that which was lost. You are a healer even though you are there at the SABC studios. So your career is a vehicle for healing. And when we start to see that it is about integrating instead of separating, then there will be progress.
Thank you so much for that insight as we leave it there for now, after speaking there to Siyabonga Mkhize of the Umsamo Institute, as the City of Tshwane says it's approved policy that allows special leave for employees who need to become traditional healers. So some of the dynamics at play there.